Good evening and welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education. This is our regular meeting for today, Tuesday, March 5th, here in Town Hall. Cammie, may I have you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Blanks?
Here.
Dr. Greenberg?
Here.
Mr. Levine?
Here.
Mr. Polyuk?
Here.
Ms. Poland?
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Mr. Zdanowitz?
Here.
Student Representative Gus Bacon?
Here.
And Gus, may I ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is there's no revision to the agenda order, and we do not have any student participation for this evening. So I'll proceed to our public communications section. We do have 7 people lined up, and before I call you up by name, this public communication time, you have comments are on topics of interest from the public. Board members do not respond to your comments. There's 3 minutes per individual, which is 21 minutes per subject matter. At the 1 minute mark, you will get a yellow flag, or 2 minutes. I always get that wrong. 2 minutes mark, you'll get a yellow flag and a red card when you're out of time. So you should begin to sum up. If you continue longer, I will give you a little nudge to wrap up on your last statement. Okay? Our first speaker is Jamie Cohen, and please state your address, and this is on the topic of AFS.
Here, correct? Right, okay. I'm Jamie Cohen, and I'm at 38 Rushley Road in West Hartford, and I wanted to thank you very much for the opportunity to address the board tonight. And I come to this meeting as a public school parent, as a local business owner, and also as a volunteer with AFS, which is the American Field Service organization. It's a nonprofit organization that works really towards a more peaceful and just world. That's really its mission, by providing international and intercultural exchange for high school students. And it provides that through hosting them with local families, and they're going to local schools and participating in the local communities. Now, AFS was started more than 70 years ago by the ambulance drivers in World War I and World War II, when the AFS stands for American Field Service, and those were the ambulance drivers. And they actually decided we shouldn't have World War III and started exchanging their own children with their European counterparts. So this has been going on a volunteer basis since World War II, and the organization itself is mostly volunteer run. So it's kind of important, I think, for you to understand why those of us who are volunteers are so very passionate about the opportunity that AFS provides to us. I went to Japan in 1984 I'll just date myself, at the age of 15, and when I was in high school, hosted a number of different exchange students in my high school. I lived in Arizona, and now I'm a volunteer and a very proud host mom. And my experience with AFS in the 1980s completely informed my educational and professional background. I went on to get a degree in Japanese language from Georgetown. I went on to get a certificate in Asian Studies from the Georgetown School of Foreign Service. I went eventually to get an MBA from Thunderbird, the International School of Management, in international marketing. And all of this started because of my AFS experience. And yes, I have helped grow the interest here in West Hartford since I've been living here for a few years. I think it's 8 now. And we currently have 6 wonderful students at Conard, 3 of whom are here with us tonight. We have 1 student at Hall who is here with us tonight. And we have 1 student at the American School for the Deaf She is not here with us tonight, or we would also have an interpreter. But tonight I'd like to share some information just about the organization and how this really mostly volunteer-run program has positively impacted our schools and our community. And later tonight, you're going to be hearing about budgets, and I'm sure that they're probably going to hear some budget challenges or cuts. And one of the challenges that AFS has come up with recently is that while we have these wonderful students this year, a large number of them, the most ever, our official number has been cut in half to 4 for all of West Hartford for the AFS program. I'm not talking about any other exchange programs. I don't know about them. And of course, we think this is a shame because we think that we're right and we're the best and that we're just gaining traction. And we'd really like for the board and administration to consider expanding that number in future years, if not this year, in future years, and wanted to make sure that you understand that today's exchange students are tomorrow's thought leaders. There are international business leaders, and there are diplomats. And we hope that you will learn more about the program and join us in welcoming all of our students each year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Federico.
Hi, my name is Federico Costantini and I live at 38 Rushley Road. So I'm an exchange student from Italy and one of the exchange students currently in America. We are 2,100 students coming from all over the world. This year for me counts, so I actually have to take a bunch of classes that my school requires. So for example, I'm taking a science class, AP Physics, a math class, AP Calculus, and US History, because I have to learn about the country that I'm currently living on, naturally. So this experience is completely shaping me. I've changed so much throughout the years. I can already see it. Like I've joined the cross-country team. I've joined the track and field team. I started running. I never ran in all my life, and now I'm running 10 miles a day with no problems. So yeah, that's kind of cool. And I represented Conard. I'm currently studying Conard, and thank you, Conard, for letting me in the school. I represented the school at the states competition for the track and field indoor, and I hope I will make in outdoor too. What's up? It's completely different now. I can see that I'm different. This is shaping me so much, and it's even if we are all people say that these two countries, Italy and USA, are pretty much the same, but that's not true. Even in school, I can see that all the teachers that I'm currently studying with, they are so different in their relationship with the students. They are more friendly. I never gave an high five to a teacher before coming to America. So, and I see that here education is very important. It's promoted. What the students want is really the teacher really cares about what you want to do with your life. I'm taking classes that I never thought I would be taking, like AP Computer Science. Never taken it. I'm doing pretty fine. I mean, it's kind of hard at the beginning, like always, because of the language. But once past the barrier, it's cool. It's something different. It's going out of your little world with your daily routine and breaking it and finding maybe something that you didn't know about yourself. So I really thank West Hartford for letting me in and giving me the ability to have this experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Federico. And next up is Serene.
Hello everyone, my name is Serene Oakby and I live on Grinnan Road. I'm an exchange student from Tunisia. It's a small country in North Africa. And this year I came here through AFS but also through the YES program, which was funded after the 9/11 to promote peace between the United States and countries of majorities of Muslim populations. And 12,000 students from my country applied to come to the United States throughout the YES program, and only 40 were selected. So I'm proud to say today I am one of 40 exchange students who got accepted and are now throughout the United States of America. And I go to Conard High School as well. And what I like about it is how supportive and caring the whole body is with teachers and staff and students. If I'm going through a bad day, there's a guarantee that at least one person is going to notice and at least one person is going to reach out and offer help. So I really like that about Conard. But in general, what I like about schools here is that I can pick my own subjects, and unlike Federico, this year doesn't count for me. So I'm taking every possible thing that I wanted to do, but I couldn't because I can't choose my classes back home. My whole experience with acting was standing in front of a mirror after watching a movie and trying to make things happen. That didn't really happen. And now I joined that class, and at first I thought I would be too shy for it, but now I have that, and I have my public speaking class, which I think is really helping me build my self-confidence and believe in myself, because maybe I'm not that shy anyways, and maybe I can overcome it even if I am. So I really care a lot about this program because it's offered a lot to me, and I know that I should give back for this program, and in fact it opened my eyes to give back to the whole world, because the world is not as big as we might think it is. So thank you for AFS, and thank you for Conard High School for being key for me in this journey and for really helping me. And a fact about AFS is it does offer scholarships for American students in more than 50 countries, and last year it awarded $3.7 million through scholarships. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Serene. Next, is it Estelle?
Hi, my name is Estelle Cohen. I live at 38 Reshley Road. I am Federico's host sister and Jamie's daughter, and I'm currently attending Bristow Middle School and going to Conard next year. 840 students went abroad with AFS from America last year, and I hope to be one in the future. AFS has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. My mom's exchange student brother, Uncle Rune from Denmark, came to visit us for my bat mitzvah, and my mom's friend Genevieve from Brussels was one of the first friends to visit when I was born. And we've even gone on vacation with my Italian Aunt Sarah. And in 2017, we went to Japan so we could meet my mom's host family and her friends from there. I've been a host sister twice, and both experiences have been amazing. I hope to be an exchange student in a few years, and I hope that schools will help me integrate it successfully with my education here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jana?
Hi, my name is Jana Kelly, and I live on 2 Grennan Road, West Hartford. And I just have to say that Serene's my host daughter. I'm like a proud mom right now. So yes, I'm a single host mom, and it's my first time. I have one furry kid with 4 legs, and my career is in psychology and HR. And it's my first time being part of the AFS community, and I'm proud of that. It's also the first time I'm using the public schools in West Hartford, and being a taxpayer, it really is a benefit that her teachers, I know them, they know me. They worked with Serene to get the classes that she wanted. At first, she wasn't able to get into theater. We worked with her teachers to get that. It made a difference because they embraced her as one of my own, and I'm really grateful for the community on that behalf. What AFS has brought to my life, I'm from Michigan. She's flown to Michigan to see my family twice, and I've asked my family, and I've asked my friends in the community, and even my hairstylist and the man that's building my basement right now, I'm asking what has Serene taught them, and I'm blown away about some of the things that, the misconceptions that people have about a different culture of where she's from. They're broken down, and what it's done is united us as humanity, and it's given me faith that there's more that we're alike than we're different. And that's what she's taught my friends, my family, that's everyone that's in my life. That's think that's what I want to say, and what it gives me confidence in our future society that from all nations, it's by the demonstration of these young adults, they are an embodiment of the ability to reach across cultural divides and embrace the commonalities of all of us. So that's what I want to say is thank you on behalf of the community to embracing them, and I hope that we continue to do so. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Amy Panetta.
Hi, thank you. I'm Amy Panetta. I live at 9 Selden Hill Drive, and my husband is here with me as well tonight. So we have the Lone Hall student from who's here in town this year through AFS. My first experience as a host anything was in grade 5 when my parents started to do this, and it has just gone on. It's an unbelievable experience. My husband and I have kind of brought it into our home as an automatic. It's so important to open everybody's eyes up to having children and young adults from various places interact and learn. We have had kids from other programs as well, and it's all different. AFS is the only program that, and this is our second year as host parents through AFS, and we have Senjar this year for the full year. We had a boy from Italy last year for the full year. So this is the first time we've really had interactions in the school system with our hosted students. Although when Superintendent Moore was Principal Moore, our older daughter went to Israel for 2 months, and he really helped facilitate, make that happen, and ease her back in and make sure all the classes matched. And so I know that he knows this stuff. So we've just hosted for many, many years, and every kid that we've had is different, comes from a different background, comes from a different environment. And it's so much fun, and it's such a great learning experience, not just for our kids, but for David and I, for our whole families. As Jana said, they're adopted by our whole families. And it's really important to show that to our children, to the children of West Hartford, to learn from the AFS kids and other exchange kids that come to town. I have to say, our kids, our 2 daughters, both are Conard graduates, and something happened last week that was so interesting to me was that we're looking at schools for our younger daughter, and one of her first comments when we went to a campus was, "There's no diversity here." They didn't see anybody that was not the same as them. And it really kind of made me feel good that that's what my kid looks for. Again, amazing experience. AFS specifically is an amazing organization, mostly volunteer run, pretty much almost all volunteer run. We help each other. We're certainly our own community. And the support and the guidance that the AFS program gives is second to none, and we've hosted through a number of programs. So thank you again for including us in this meeting as well as in the West Hartford school system. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, is it Danica? Donica.
Sorry, I'm used to that. Clearly, I don't exercise enough because I just ran from work and I'm a little huffing and puffing. So my name is Donica Delgado, 16-year West Hartford resident. I've been a parent in the West Hartford public school system and second-time host mom with AFS. Sort of suddenly came by that role, last minute. Hosted a student last year and had a wonderful experience. And then had such a great experience and thought it was so valuable, but not just for our family, but for the community and for our schools that we're hosting again this year. And I'm looking at profiles for next year. So just a little plug for that experience of being a host family. I'm a therapist here in the community and a medical social worker. So I think I bring a special perspective of wanting us to create a community of students who have cultural understanding, have a degree of cultural competence, and can interface with people of any kind of background in a unique and exceptional way. Sorry, I'm still breathing hard. Really need to go to the gym more. And so just because of my training, I think that's very valuable. And that's not necessarily something that we get from sort of what we ordinarily build into high school education. So having lived in West Hartford for this many years and watched my daughter be in the public school system and understanding our community's belief in the exceptional education that our kids get here in West Hartford, and seeing families flood into West Hartford specifically because of our schools, I've thought a lot about what makes an exceptional education. Lots of schools provide adequate education, and we don't want to just do that in West Hartford. I think everybody here and all the people who work so hard to live in West Hartford agree with that. And I think one of the things that I've come to believe is that an exceptional education means that we're creating people who have learned more than they might have learned by studying trigonometry and the English language and science. But we're creating people who are going to be good citizens. People who are going to be good people. Folks who are going to be able to engage with anybody, whatever their background. Students and then adults who are going to be globally minded, who are going to be able to participate as citizens of the world in a meaningful way. And it's been my observation as a host mom that by bringing these kids here, yes, we do something great for them, and we really do. The kids that I've hosted are so grateful for the experience they've had. My daughter, who's had a chance to have siblings now, is so grateful for that experience. But the kids in the school, this year we've had so many kids who have reached all different kinds of, does that mean I have to stop? I don't know what the color coding is. All right. I'll wrap up. I'll finish the sentiment. So we've had kids who have taken classes from 10th through 12th grade in the high schools this year, who have been on track and soccer and in choir and in the band and in the plays and the musicals. They have reached hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of our kids because we've had this great diverse group of students who have had the opportunity to impact our kids and help to create those exceptionally educated and global citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have no unfinished business, and so that takes us to new business, which is the presentation of the Superintendent's 2019-2020 budget recommendations. The recommendation is that the Board of Education receive the Superintendent's recommended 2019-2020 education budget and begin the process of reviewing and modifying for final approval and adoption as the Board of Education budget at the April 2nd, 2019 Board of Education meeting. May I have a motion?
It's not working, but someone.
Oh, did I?
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Moore.
Good evening, everybody, and it's that time of year again, and the budget season happens at a time where almost every year there's snow on the ground when we present the budget, and we're opening the windows when you vote on the budget. It just seems to happen that way over this month. So this year's budget has been a lot of work putting it together. We had adjustments made once Governor Lamont put his budget forward about 10 days ago that shifted. And since this is, you saw him come up, I want to thank Chip Ward. I'll thank him more on the 2nd when we're done with the budget process, but this is Chip's last budget. And it's hard for the people that don't know the work that Chip does the things that he sees. In fact, in the governor's budget, as you noticed, the Hartford Current and the state website had the wrong numbers, and it was throughout the state, and Chip's the one that called both. And because the Current was using the state's website, so it wasn't the Current's fault. I don't want to place blame on them. But the numbers that were out there weren't right, and Chip looked at it and immediately said to me, "That's not right. This is what they did," and knew right away why it happened. The service Chip's brought to the town to craft these budgets over the years he is one of the heroes of West Hartford and what he's done for our kids and our families, and has watched every dime. Trust me. So I want to thank him for his work on this. Budget starts the moment the last year starts, the last year ends. Andy, Chip, and I meet every Tuesday for an hour every Tuesday, starting the beginning of the year, throughout the year, looking at both the trends of what's happening this year and things that are coming up for next year. And as you know, during negotiations, all of those things have an impact on this budget. This year's budget is consciously, this year I haven't spent much time talking about you at the budget. I think that it's important that we don't spend every year talking about the tragedy about to befall our budget. Because what happens is you're always talking about, I don't mean you, I mean if we are always talking about what's going to happen and are we going to cut teachers, our young teachers are going to be nervous about job security here. And I do believe that the past 2 years had a significant effect on our morale. And I think that this year we've done our best to make sure people understand that that crisis where we're looking at $7 million cut from the state or a $20 million cut from the state, at least for now, has passed. And without that threat being out there for this budget, I didn't want people to be on edge as they move forward. So, with that being said, what does this year's budget look like? This year's superintendent's proposed budget. So, these statistics are for both you and for the people watching, because West Hartford still changes every year. It's never static. That's the fascinating thing about our community. We are vibrant, we are ever changing, and our schools change to meet the changing needs in our community. While we have 9,564 students total, more than 1 in 5 of our students go home and speak a different language than English in their home. 74 different languages, that's up from last year, which, we heard people talking about. People notice it. It's something, there is value certainly in who our kids are growing up with and the variety of people they get to meet. 43% of our students are under the definition of minority students. That number has gone up pretty much about 1% a year, and that's the trend line. I would expect it to continue. 26% of our students, when you think about that, 1 in 4 of our students are on free and reduced lunch, qualify for free and reduced lunch. That number is up this year, but I do want to say one thing. Part of the reason that it's up is because they changed the mechanics of qualifying for it. It's not that we've seen a uptick in poverty or downturn in wages. We've actually had more students qualify based on changing standards of what it takes to meet. So that's a good thing for our kids, more of our families getting help. 12% of our pre-K-12 students receive special education services. That number, as we see, goes up every year, as it does truly throughout the state. So those are kind of about our kids and what we see, and as we go through, we'll talk about our teachers and the work that they do. But I do think it's important for a minute to remember that we're also managing this large structural organization. So we have 1.8 million square feet of building space. Put in perspective, that's basically the same as the U.S. Capitol buildings, as the U.S. Capitol and all the offices. That's maintained every day. That's swept, that's cleaned. That's our custodial staff and what they're doing in maintenance. In addition to that, 336 acres of fields, which, put that into context, that's 2 Disneylands or 3 Vatican cities. That is constantly under service of the people that work to make sure we have safe environments, which just kind of shows you the scope of what we're talking about in West Hartford, because it's easy to forget that when we look at this, and then you see some big numbers here, and it's, well, we're the 9th largest school district in the state of Connecticut. Now, some historical perspective, you've seen this. There was a time when West Hartford spent more per pupil than any other town in the state of Connecticut. Then we saw it plummet really around the time of the economic downturn. You see when that dip happened. And we've seen a rebound this year. We're now 107th in per pupil expenditure. Really, I think one of the main reasons for that is we pass our budget later in the year than a lot of our neighboring communities, and a lot of communities in the state of Connecticut were actually a late budget. So last year, we had a better idea of what doom wasn't going to befall us by the time we were passing this budget, whereas those districts that passed earlier certainly cut more in anticipation that they were going to be cut more. So that's the reason you've seen us go all the way up to 107th. But 107th of 169 towns in per pupil expenditures, the thing about that is it sounds either good or bad. It sounds good, we're efficient. It sounds bad, we're not spending enough. It just depends on the prism that you're looking at the budget with. But I do want to talk about what we produce for a second from our kids. And I look at that as graduates, and I see so many of our elementary principals in the audience, and middle school principals and department supervisors. And this isn't to besmirch the work they do. Really, Conard and Hall get a lot of the accolades that they've built at the younger grades, because that's what do our graduates look like. And everything's gone into that. And we see how our kids grow over time. We see gaps that close over time. We see that we're doing that, and the teachers are doing that in the classroom. But one kind of interesting measure that we don't talk about enough because it's just become so much of what we do, and the numbers really are so big. But if we take the designation of AP Scholar, which the College Board puts out in every town, West Hartford has 188 AP Scholars. Now, that's not including all of our other designations. So in a community our schools are 2% of the population of Connecticut school-age children. So we're 2% there. We have 5% of the AP Scholars. But if you extrapolate it out a little bit further and talk about the depth of our programs and what we're producing, we know that there's a state AP Scholar who wouldn't be included in AP Scholar. We've had 3 of the past 4 in the state of Connecticut have been from West Hartford. Then there's national AP Scholars. National AP Scholars average a 4 or more on 8 or more exams and get a 4 on 8 or more exams. West Hartford has 49 such students. And again, that wouldn't be a metric I would use for everybody. It's certainly not. However, I do want to focus on that we produced 49 kids last year that met the National AP Scholar designation. 10% of all the national scholars from the state of Connecticut are from West Hartford. So 5 times outpacing our population. But taken another way, we have more, if West Hartford were a state instead of a town, if we were a state, we'd have more AP national scholars than Alaska, Mississippi, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, New Mexico, Vermont, and Wyoming. If we were a state, we would be 42nd in that. If we take a look at our capstone scholars designations, we had 22, which is a third of all capstone scholars produced in the state of Connecticut last year. And if you took us nationally, if West Hartford were a state, only 28 states produced more AP capstone scholars. So the opportunity for an elite education that we offer our kids is tremendous. And I only say that because later I'm going to be talking about how our spending in some ways, has shifted to special education. And sometimes people worry, well, what are you taking away from? We're offering opportunities to all of our kids so that they can be the best possible graduate they can, and they can achieve the most that they can, and it's unique to every child. But we're not doing it at the expense of any other child. And that's very important for us to notice as we look at this number. Comparisons, net current expenditure per pupil averages. This is something we look at because we do get compared to Durg B. You know, we look at that in test scores. Paul always says, this isn't a comparison we shy away from. But you can look at it sometime and think, oh, the achievement isn't exactly the same. If we spent the average expenditure per pupil that Durg B spends, our budget would basically need to be $10 million higher than I'm proposing to spend at that average. To spend at the state average expenditure per pupil, we'd need to spend over $5 million more. And in comparison with the other 10 largest school districts, because sometimes people just say, well, it's benefits of scale, we'd still need $800,000 more. Now, this is something I know you get asked about. So I wanted to put it in the budget for a specific reason. I'll talk about that. 10-year look back on staffing. One of the things about staffing that I've talked about as we go into budget, people will say, well, you've had a declining enrollment, as we have. And people have said, well, you haven't cut or anything. People just haven't necessarily noticed the cuts. We haven't had mass layoffs because when you have a structure as large as West Hartford's, in any given year you're going to have retirements, say 15. You're going to have people leave the profession, another few. And then you're going to have people on leave for one reason or another, people move into an opportunity in another district perhaps. So there's always going to be job openings. So in fact, over this 10-year period that we've lost 589 students, our regular ed staff, and this is just teachers, this slide is just about teachers, we've actually cut 26 and a half teachers. So any notion that we've just kept the same number of teachers is just plain false during this time period. Now, the kind of the cool collection of this that Chip and I didn't expect when he put this together, when you compare our special education enrollment, so we've gone from 1,225 students to 1,365 special education students, so 140 more, which has resulted in 26.5 more special education teachers, mental health professionals that are designated in that area. That's an exact one-to-one number. We didn't expect it to be that way. It just kind of, the symmetry there is really interesting that we're ending with basically 900 teachers in the district. I don't put this on here, and I want to put a caveat out that I said last year. When I talk about special education funding, this is in no way to blame special education parents nor special education children that we have to spend more on them. That's what a community does. We provide the education that our children need. There is naturally going to be a higher percentage of staff needed in special education, which is a combination of a few factors. One is it's just plain a need. Lower student to teacher ratio is certainly more effective. Second, legal requirements under what a planning and placement team recommends and under IDEA, the American Disabilities Act. And some of them have become more stringent over the past few years. In addition, over this 10-year period, you've seen more significant needs come forward. And this is in West Hartford, it's in America. This coincides with the rise of autism diagnoses in America. Paired with that is parents, West Hartford is certainly a destination district for parents of children with special needs. I hear all the time parents tell me, that's why I moved here. And during the summer, Gretchen and I get phone calls, spring, summer, actually they started a month ago, with people, okay, we're looking, what are the services we would be provided if our child were in West Hartford? That's something I'm not going to shy away from. We do it very well, and I thank Gretchen and her staff for what we do. But we need to meet those needs, and that's why you've seen the increase in those areas. But it belies this notion there hasn't been cuts. It's been flat, which you can say, but the number of kids are down. But no two children are alike, and we've got to stop thinking that way. So, the actual budget itself. So a roll forward budget doing the exact same thing as we did last year. No additions, no deletions, just keeping everything the exact same would be a $4.2 million increase. That's why when I know that there's an idea, well, why can't the budget be zero? A zero budget can't happen unless there's cuts. So, $4.2 million, which would be a 2.56% increase. This is basically made up of salaries are increasing by $2.54 million. Average wage increase is 3.3% due to step costs. We're actually, one thing I do want to talk about here is we're under budget in this year's salaries by 1%. And that reflects there isn't a mindset here that if we get it, we're going to spend it. We're actually one teacher under in elementary education because one of the class sections came in smaller than we expected it would be. We made changes right up to July and to when class lists went out, actually up till August when class lists went out. So right now we're under budget in salaries for a variety of other reasons also. Medical expenses, and this is kind of the big good news story of this budget, and this is the last budget pretty much where medical expenses are the boogeyman under my bed that I'm worried about blowing up our budget. If you remember a few years ago during a very bad economic time to start with, I had to propose an 8.6% increase in the proposed budget because of our health care costs skyrocketing that year and budgeting it in. So the transition to the state partnership plan, as you negotiate in the teacher's contract, does a couple of things. It keeps our active health costs growing at like an 8% trend rate over time. So it makes this a predictable part of our budget, year in, year out. The other thing, where we'll see substantial savings is in retiree health costs. And we're moving to a fully insured model from a self-insured plan for our retirees. So that will save us directly from our self-insured plan. So that's actually a decrease there of $60,000 in the budget. Pension expenses, and I'd like to talk about this a little bit because you see that's a big number, 16% increase. $288,000 of this is pension costs to the town. Those are all of our employees that are not teachers, that are not part of the teacher retirement plan. So actually, including me, I'm in the teacher retirement plan. So it's all of the non-teachers. That goes up by $288,000 increased costs. In effect, this is a bill from the town who manages our pensions. They tell us this is what the cost will be. This year it's $288,000. Then we have the new contribution for teachers' pension, $524,000, which, Chip and I talked about it, and I called Matt Hart, the town manager, and told him that's appropriate. It's teachers' pension costs. It should be reflected in our budget. There will be communities where boards of ed and town councils or town governments are like this, fighting over where it falls. I believe it's appropriate to fall in our budget because those are our teachers, those are the pensions. In the end, it's all the same money anyway, but that's something that gets caught up a lot of the time by people. So that $524,000 I want you to keep in mind because 2 weeks ago, this budget was a lot lower without that $524,000 in there. In fact, it would have been basically a true roll forward budget. But that $524,000 we need to keep in mind because that's going to be $1.6 million over the next 3 years that we're going to be paying. This is a phase in over 3 years. And thank you, Deb, because that's the other part of this. This is a maybe. You could know, or the town council could know by the time they vote on a budget, that that's not going to be the actual number. It could be less. I don't see it becoming I don't see it growing higher than that. But right now, that $524,000 is more than a placeholder, I think. I think it's a reasonable number to put in there. But again, we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it needs to be reflected in the budget. So that's why pension expenses go up 16% this year. Transportation expenses increased by $440,000. That is basically, the vast majority of that is our bus contract, which is negotiated over time, as you know. And the additional buses are not regular education buses. Those are all special education transportation increases. Tuition expenses increased by about $60,000 over next year with projections. These are outplaced tuitions to crack Hartford magnet schools. All other expenses increase by $400,000. This is inflationary growth, putting in at about 1.5% inflationary growth. And then looking at higher general insurance cost, which is really that higher insurance is reflected in workers' compensation, self-insured costs, and liability coverage. Our liability coverage is up 9% this year. So the budget increase needed in the roll forward would be $4.2 million or 2.6% budget increase. Changes for 2019. So we'll start with a cut, as we've talked about. $930,000 in total. Regular education staffing drops by 12.2 FTEs. FTEs basically each represents a teacher. When you say, how can there be a 0.2? There's 0.6 teachers, there's 0.4 teachers, could be somebody that comes in 2 days a week, could be somebody somebody that comes in 2 days a week at the elementary school would be a 0.4. Somebody that teaches one period at the high school would be a 0.2. Basically, that's how you break it down. 5 periods at the high school, 5 days a week at the elementary school. That breakdown looks at, and we'll go through these details as we go through the budget workshop, but it's basically 4.8 less teachers at the elementary level, 3.5 less teachers at the middle school level, and 3.9 less teachers at the high school level, all driven purely by enrollment data and trends. Now, one thing about that 12.2, just as last year there was an increase at the high school, there's a decrease. This is one of those that you can cut the line, you can add to the line, and then when the kids show up, we're going to spend what the line needs to be. And that's what we've done. And you see this year we've spent less. In other ways, we've had to augment in other areas. So, special education up by 5.45 FTEs. This is really across the board in special education. We see it in resource, but I do want to highlight one of the few real additions in terms of something that we're choosing to do. And that is a social worker in charge of crisis management, working chiefly at the secondary level, though being used at all levels. And I'll give you an example, and this isn't the only way that it would be used, that he or she would be used. We have the app that you know that we get reports on a student in crisis. We have 5 different secondary schools all going through it. This could happen at a different level. It could happen at an elementary level where you have different school counselors operating. When a child's in crisis, we want one person to be kind of the district person that's looking at a threat assessment of the child, that's looking at how did we handle it, that's really keen on what are trends that we're seeing across in this, and as part of those school safety plans that are going to move forward with that child, or individual plans that need to happen with that child, and the person that can react quickly, not drop everything else and drop a caseload of people that may need them, and can work kind of that immediate triage and work with both parents and outside support staff. So that's one of those that's in that program. I do think it's needed as we've looked at it. Gretchen will be here at the workshop and go through all the other additions. But the other additions are kind of meeting defined needs. That's an elected need that I believe is a need that I'm putting in for. Elementary security officers, this would add 2 school security officers, both at the elementary level. Right now we have 1 focused on the north end, 1 focused on the south end, shared amongst the 11 elementary schools. This will double that presence, both at drop-off, both at pickup, and when there's things happening like a bear at Norfelt. That will help us to meet the needs of our schools and keep our kids safe. So I do want to highlight kind of that special education security officer spending, because you'll see a lot of articles that say in the United States we've seen a massive amount of spending on security and decreases in mental health. That's not the way we've done in West Hartford. We've seen increase in mental health and increase in security, putting them both together as we keep our kids safe. And that was reflected in the CIP as we look at construction in the coming years, where security is still going to be a focus. TA and subpay increase. This is a big number, $410,000. When you see in your budget book, it's a bigger number as far as a percentage increase. That takes us from $90 to $100 a day. It's $410,000. I understand that's a large number. This is a big problem that we've had in terms of not being able to find TAs and not being able to always find subs. This puts us more competitive with our area towns in comparison with other districts. The fact is, if you look at the hourly rate, this puts us in line with what could be a law coming forward. That's where we are. So it's a big ask. I understand that. It was smaller, and then as we listen to our school administrators, this is something where even when they have the TA, they can't find them, and that puts us students' needs, makes it more difficult to meet. All other, so I want to focus on 3 things here. The Director of Diversity Advancement. You all know the work Rosina's done. I don't need to talk about the Equity and Diversity Council and the amazing job that Rosina's done. I will tell you that in the past 3 days, I've had 2 communities ask me for job descriptions of Rosina, and I'm like, I don't have a job description. It's what she does is too big. And those are towns 1/3, 1/2 our size that are looking to add this position full-time. Rosina's position as Director of Diversity Advancement is half of her job. The other part is continuing education program. That program will continue as is. Our postgraduate not our postgraduate program, our alternative degree program to meet the needs of our kids, you guys, of our community. You guys have been at that graduation in November. It is one of the great events that we hold every year. People that work to come back. That program will continue, but instead of Rosina running that, and then also running continuing education, which are the various cooking classes and all of those, as well as like the bus trips to a museum. The central question becomes, is that really the role of the Board of Education to be running that? Because, in fact, the town on the leisure services side, they produce their own booklet, and we've been kind of in competition with them. And depending on the budget, I've basically, and we're meeting and talking about how can we do this and how can we make it cost efficient for both sides, where we'll slide those pieces to the town, because it's not really in our description to be running these, and the duplicative nature has reached its time, I think. And this allows Rosina's focus to be on, as Director of Diversity Advancement, on the professional development that we need, that we've started, that we're working on. And what our principals and teachers are saying is we need a little more help. We need more time, we need more focus. And I've got Rosina every night going out to night schools, and she can't do it at 0.5. This is, in many ways, if I'm prioritizing something, that becoming 1.0. West Hartford's been a leader in this area. We need to continue to be a leader. Rosina is like the leader for this in schools, in the area, everywhere, and I think we need to recognize that. Department supervisors, you see many of our department supervisors out here. 2 years ago, during a budget, very difficult budget time when we had a retirement of one of our 2 world language supervisors, we didn't fill that position. Kept in the budget, didn't fill it. Last year, kept in the budget, we're going to fill it, and then ended up cutting it at the end when we had more cuts come through from the town. So it returns here for that position. So rather than 1 person overseeing world language in all 16 of our schools, we have 2. And then the pre-K paras, and this, much like Rosina's position, because it's not a complete ad, because the thing is, Rosina's position lived in the continuing education budget, which is separate from the general fund in that it takes in money and puts out money. And so the shift over is in addition to the general fund, but not necessarily in the same way. It's not a full shift. Pre-K paras is the same way, because we have, we get state grants to have pre-K. As part of that, we charge what the state sets as our pre-K rate, which is a fantastic deal. It hasn't gone up in years. We don't take in enough to pay for the paras as we did 2-3 years ago, so that money has to come out of the general fund. So, and again, the specifics of the actual amount of each of these will be delineated in the workshop. So for this total page, budget change need is $0.54,540,000 or 0.33%. When you think about it, the pension cost was $525,000. So you see how this kind of ends up mirroring that. So the 2019-2020 budget summary, the 18-19 budget was $164.35 million. Roll forward increase be $4.2 million, then a $0.54 million increase, ends up with a $169.1 million budget. There are people that will believe we're spending too much, and there are people in this audience that believe we're not spending enough. This is one of the most difficult tasks, if not the most difficult task that we do, is trying to craft a budget that maintains our excellence without sacrificing. There's no really big new programs here. Last year there were a couple new programs. This year there isn't. I looked at some of the things we've talked about. Cheryl, you and I going back years, and the whole board has had this discussion, and as we look at the increased credit hours required, a logical question is, do you go to 8 periods at the high school, shift the lunch, maybe even go block scheduling, 4 periods a day? That's a $1.3 to $1.5 million increase. It's something that, at some point, it may be something that we look at and say, that's something. At this point, that's not what's in there. So other things that people have brought forward that are included, really the reason is money. But that's where we are. I think it's a reasonable budget. And one of the things that I also want to mention is that after this year, in the past 10 years, 11 years, one thing that's also different that I take great pride in is we return money to the town. Last year we returned over $1 million. In the past 7 years, our average return has averaged $800,000 a year. In the past 10 years, if we include this year, what we're looking at the end of the year, it's $8 million. That's gone back to the town. That's not reflected in cuts or numbers. You can't go over the budget. You all know that rule for you. We can't spend more than we have. The difference is a lot of places in May is, let's paint, let's do this, let's do this. We have $400,000, how can we spend it? That's not what we do. We guard our money, and I think we treat the taxpayers right. Our parents demand a lot of us. Our taxpayers sacrifice for our parents and our kids. It is much appreciated, and so that's where we are for this year.
Thank you, Tom. Are we ready for the vote?
Before we vote, can we just go over what the next steps are?
Oh, by all means, let me... Yeah, I'm sorry, Deb. So, in your budget book, you see on the left-hand page, it's the orange book that goes through all of the different pieces. Okay? And that explains everything but the first sheet in here. And by the way, all of these are available to the public. They're all online. The budget suggestion box is open for the public. It's all on our website. And if you look at what comes next, over the next month, Wednesday, March 13th, we have budget workshop number 1. Now, during that workshop, we will go through the packets that you'll see included behind the pink sheet that details all the things I went through, but in their gory detail, kind of page by page. Available for questions at that point. You'll be looking at it, answering questions about where we spent this year, and then what this looks like for next year. So that's Wednesday, March 13th at 7, budget workshop number 1. Tuesday, March 19th is a regular board meeting. So at that board meeting, we don't really discuss the budget per se. People may come out and talk about the budget, but it's not a budget item. It's a regular board meeting. Wednesday, March 27th is the public hearing at 7 o'clock here where people can come make their thoughts known. And that's just a regular public hearing. Once the public hearing ends, we will go into workshop number 2. Workshop number 2, immediately following the public hearing, there's not presentations of the various pages. We're available to answer questions. And I urge you, if questions come up, feel free, let us know if something's confusing. Email me, and then I'll forward your email to Chip, and he'll reply. And if you need a description of something, and by the way, even if you just need a description of one of the workshops, just, a heads up, looking for this, that's fine. Most questions we can't answer, but there's some things, if it takes research, a heads up is appreciated. After that work session, from budget number 2 on the 27th, Tuesday, April 2nd is the regular board meeting here where you will vote on the adoption of the budget. So that's the timeline.
Are there any questions? Any other questions? Mark.
There you go. Tom, I know we talked about it early in the process, maybe fall of 2018 or a little later, maybe winter, because we're going to go over line item. We're going to go over this entire binder in one workshop in room 400. No, here?
No,
Okay.
That's here. Yep.
All right. Because I just wanted to be clear on that too, because we used to have 2 workshops and we talked about having a second workshop, but I guess we never put it in.
Well, no, we do have 2 workshops. The second one that follows the public hearing is the second workshop.
Right, but as you remember, I got in trouble that year for asking questions. And so that wasn't, we used to have then 3 workshops instead of 2.
Well, we had 3, but the difference was the first workshop was the presentation of the general education budget. The second workshop was the presentation of the special education budget. And then the third workshop was that. So the combination is just we put general and special education together for a lot of reasons, really not. It wasn't really focused on one last night. It was more focused on not separating out our educational program. So that's a few years ago.
Yes, thank you. And recognizing that all of this material is online, is there by chance a hard copy that may be available to persons who may not have a user-friendly computer or internet connection?
Yeah, if people wanted to come in, we can print up a budget for them. Yep.
Any other questions, clarifications, discussions? Are we ready to vote on the recommendation? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Staff communication reports. Superintendent report, Mr. Moore.
That was it.
Okay, moving forward. Any other staff reports or board discussions?
I had just a question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but Tom, I'm wondering if you can just give us a quick update on how the special election worked, given that school was open. And I know we're going to be having this happen again in about 6 weeks, and wondering how that was.
Yeah, it worked fine, other than us having a power outage at one of the schools and polling places. The next special election won't involve the entire district, so it's more limited. I think that if I'm being honest, in today's world, if we're having a special election again, now I know there's a timeline that has to go earlier than this, but in the long-range plans, I would prefer us not to have voting in schools. I would like on special elections that we shrink the number of polling places. There is an alternative plan in place. We could go to 3 polling places, central, south, and north end of town. There is nobody that wants people to vote more than I do. I'm very proud to live in a community that once again won the cup for voting. With that being said, there weren't problems other than the power outage. We ran things well, but it does fly in the face of some of the things that we talk about to have people come in and out of a building at the same time that our kids are there.
I agree, actually, because I was one of those parents / voters that I walked into the side of hall, and I've walked in there or been through the hallways many, many times, and there's always ruckuses in each room, you know, with the music, because it was over by that end of the, and, you know, not paying attention, looking, I literally walked right past the black box because I just assumed they were students in there because there was a rustle and they were performing, getting ready, doing something, right? And I didn't want to interrupt, so I just kept walking. And because in the past we used to have it one hallway over in another room, so I was looking for that room. And I spend more time at hall than most, so for me to miss it was kind of. And I walked. Actually, I had to bring something to the office, but then I walked straight to the office without anybody stopping me, and dropped something off, and then went back. So I agree with you, Tom. I didn't like that feeling where I could have just walked through that entire school. So.
Yes, I just want to share on a soft note, a neutral note. Just want to recognize all of the leadership and the students who participated in the Chocolate Cafe held last Saturday. As we know, that's an event that's held every year that's representing students from the high school level, middle school level, and elementary school level, different orchestras. And it was wonderful from beginning to end, plus the little delicacies and treats they allowed as well. So thank you so much for our leadership and thank you for our students. We certainly have a very, very talented group among us, and I thank you all for continuing to foster that.
So the next agenda item is routine matters, approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of February 20th, 2019, and the recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of February 20th, 2019, and we did have a couple of corrections. Did anybody else pick it up in their board packet? If not, there was, let's see, on page 2, the correction was, it's supposed to be such as cause and effect, not case, and then the other one was Dave's last name was spelled incorrectly. Okay. May I have a motion? Okay, so Cheryl and, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Now, information and reports. Board members, communication and reports. Do you have reports from other boards and organizations? Dave?
There we go. I am on. All right. Hey, as you know, I'm the board's representative to West Hartford Community Television, and they would like to invite everyone on the board and everyone in the audience and watching at home to their annual Take 5 All Access Party fundraiser. That's coming up on Friday, March 15th at the Pond House. It's great community stuff here. Every penny raised will go towards the station's efforts to provide a community-driven media center. And one of the exciting things here is they're going to have Matthew Dix, one of our teachers in town. He's going to be sharing some stories. You know, he is, let's see here, he's a math story slam champion, and he's going to serve up a story or two along with dessert. So we look forward to that and many other things happening. That's on Friday, March 15th.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else? Mark?
So I don't think we could talk enough. I think we could talk at the next few meetings. I don't know who's participating. Most do. Is the West Hartford Cooking is coming up March. Somebody help. 30th. March 30th. Great event. Always a very, very good event. Fun event. So just if the people home are watching and people in the audience, probably most of you will be there. So good event.
Next, non-staff communication and reports. So, Gus, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Just a few announcements to make. Arjun Jagavan, Ganesh Peterson, Matt Vitelli, and Ava Dela Cruz have all been named as finalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program. Recently, Conard took down the Hall swimming team with a final score of 95-91. The boys' indoor track team set a new school record of 1 minute and 36 seconds in the 4x200 meter relay at the state's meet. The girls' indoor track sprint medley relay team finished fourth in the state. The Conard Business Club recently finished their book drive, and they donated over 300 books to the Connecticut Children's Medical Center. Last week, the African American Cultural Society hosted seminars about African American history. The Conard Gymnastics team finished fourth in the state. The Conard cheerleading team finished first at the NCEA Championship. And tickets are now on sale for Conard's winter musical, Singin' in the Rain. Showtimes are on March 8th, 9th, the 15th, and the 16th at 7, and then there's a 2 p.m. showing on the 10th. Tickets are $18 for adults and $15 for students and children. And this was already mentioned, the West Hartford's Cooking event will be on March 30th from 6:30 to 9 at the Town Hall. 8th graders to 11th graders are currently picking classes for next year. And lastly, parent-teacher conferences are going to start later this month.
If I could, since Megan isn't here, I want to remind people Pops and Jazz at Hall. Tickets are on sale now. Basically, the dates align with Singing in the Rain at Conard. And in addition to that, congratulations to the boys track team at Hall, which won the state open title. Another team title for Hall and Mr. Zatoon. Mr. Duarte is once again disappointed and losing out.
Could I throw in one more for Hall? A shout out to the concert jazz band, who once again was accepted into the essentially Ellington competition in New York City. And just as a reminder, that's where they record a selected piece and they send it in along with high schools from all over the country, and the judges listen to it blind. They don't know which band is playing this, and they got chosen once again to go to this competition, one of 15 high schools from throughout the nation. So kudos to them.
Rob?
Too good tonight. Might have to address that in the budget. So I just want to piggyback on what Tom said, that there's also a sensory-friendly Pops and Jazz performance going on at Hall Thursday at 6 p.m. It's their dress rehearsal. I went to it last year, though. It's a great show, and it's not as crowded. So if anybody is considering or interested in going to that, they should put that on their calendars.
Thank you. Next agenda item is future business. And I feel like this is a repeat because Mr. Moore just did this, but because it's on the agenda, I need to go through it again, so I'll be quick. The announcement for the future meeting dates, Wednesday, March 13th, which will be our board workshop number 1, right here in Town Hall in this room. The second meeting is Tuesday, March 19th, which will be our regular Board of Ed meeting at 7 p.m., again in this room here. And number 3, the Wednesday, March 27th, which will be our public hearing, beginning at 7 p.m., followed by a board workshop right here in this room. And then for number 4, which would be Tuesday, April 2nd, which will be our regular Board of Ed meeting when we will adopt the budget. Is there any request for future agenda items? Okay, none at this time. Do we have any other comments from our visitors in the audience? Okay, please go to the podium and state your name and your address. And you have 3 minutes to speak on your topic. And at the 1 minute mark, 2 minute mark, 2 minute mark, you will get a yellow card. And then when your time is up, you'll get a red card.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Naya Davis. I live on 23 Cortlandt Street. I first would like to say that I go to actually Conard High School. There's been fights after fights. I personally feel in danger because I have seizures, and I don't want someone fighting and then I'm walking by and I get hit and someone's fighting triggers my seizures. Also, when I was at Whiting Lane in 3rd grade, the school said that I was going to go to Hall High School. Fast forward to middle school, they now say you had to go to King Philip in order to go to Hall High School. Also, there's a lot of kids that participate in vaping. I don't want to breathe that in and get an asthma attack. And there's girls that are not virgins and are participating in sexual activities, and I don't want to be pressured into that to be accepted. But also, I don't feel comfortable in being in that environment because I feel like I'm a predator. Someone's going to pressure me into having sexual intercourse. Also, the kids there participate in getting high, and I also wouldn't like to be pressured into that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any others? So we will proceed to, there's no executive session, so we are now adjourned at 8. I'm sorry.
I make a motion that we adjourn?
A second. Is there a second?
Sure.
It's Cheryl. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. I'm in a little hurry, huh? Thank you all.